So I'm introducing Ryan Barton Grimley. Now he's the director, writer, producer, and it would be fair to say one of the main actors for Elijah's Ashes, which is a multi-nominated film at our Nice International Film Festival. So thank you for joining us and congratulations with your nomination.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it.
No, and you are a shining example, if I may start by saying, of having the headset on, because literally the clarity is stunning, and you'd be amazed how many people I speak to don't put the headsets on, so it does make a huge difference.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's kind of like not putting your shoes on when you go out to play a game of football, right?
I love the analogy. Very good, and I love the way you said football as well. So well done. Although you could be referring to your football, American football. I don't know.
No, I'm referring to yours.
Okay. Are you a fan of it then?
I a little fan. My dad's a big fan.
Because it's really taken off in the States, hasn't it? I think recently, the last 10 years, it's really become a big sport.
In California, it's just massive. I mean, we have a bunch of pro teams, we have semi-pro teams. It's huge here. It's beautiful. I love it.
And you've got the weather. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what it is today, but I'm guessing it's going to be about 80 degrees down over your way. Would that be about right?
Yeah. It's like sunny, 75. I'm just wearing the sweatshirt for looks, guys. That's it.
Okay. So
just fun.
No, I've been to the States, but not the West Coast. I'd really like to go. I must get the one. That's just one of those things. So this is quite a major production, so because it is a feature comedy, isn't it, Elijah? Well, actually, let me roll back from that. Would it be fair to say it's a feature comedy, or am I sort of, because obviously the runtime, but is this actually sort of a kernel for a series? Or I mean, it's best to ask you how this came about, really, and then go into the story. But can you just tell us what the whole thing is about?
I mean, all comedic features I've been making, in any kind of feature since my first film, The Truth, I've tried to make as a backdoor pilot, basically.
Yeah.
So kind of just a really nice long pilot to establish the characters and kind of build the world out, and the particular sense of humor, how dark or not dark or broad or sarcastic it is. Elijah's Ashes started out as more of a kind of 90s independent dramedy.
Mm-hmm.
Which it has a bit of that feel still, but then I kind of abandoned it for a while and was working on genre stuff and commercial stuff, and then kept coming back to it. Well, first of all, because I like the brother relationship. I like relationships that are like grumpy old men with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. I love those kinds of combative comedic relationships. Laurel and Hardy was a huge thing when I was a kid, really small. I loved it. And then, so there was a turning point for this project, because basically it had gone away, and I was writing a big zombie horror movie with some elements of comedy to it, and pitching it around LA, trying to get it made just like everyone else here. And I went home, my quote unquote home here, which is really only a couple of hours north of Los Angeles in Central California, but it's a very different feel. And I went to a 4th of July barbecue, and I experienced some pretty insane homophobia from my perspective.
Because this is kind of leading me on to, and this is a really interesting part of it, because I was reading the spec about this. So, yeah, can you sort of elaborate on that? Because there's all sorts of questions, and that's one of the ones that I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, so I went to this 4th of July barbecue, and I had not seen quite a few of these people in about 20 years, maybe like 15 years. And they had no idea what I was doing with my personal life, if I was gay or straight or whatever.
Yeah.
They had no idea.
Yeah.
And I just this kind of really aggressive, out in the open homophobia, where they thought they were just really super funny, and I just thought to myself, and it just kept happening over and over again over this 3 to 4 hour period, and being in LA, I just had not encountered that in a long time. It just sort of, it's a very hospitable, open city to live in, very friendly to everyone.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't seen that in a while. And I mean, I had traveled to, the Midwest and the South as well, and not seen it. So it kind of blew me away. And I went, wow, there's a whole thing happening here. I mean, these people have no idea what my life is like. I mean, they're just assuming that I'm a straight guy who's totally cool with this. A, I might not be cool with this, and B, I might not be straight. I mean, it's pretty brutal. So it kind of forced me to go back and start to reevaluate that script and look at the relationship differently. And it was the kernel that made me start to explore that brother relationship from that perspective, and to try to see if I could mine some kind of getting together on both ends. Because at the end of the day, I wanted to create I didn't want to create a coming of age movie. There are enough of those movies. I wanted to have some kind of resolution or some kind of acceptance from both sides of the other, which and then use that as the wall to kind of throw the ball against regarding comedy and conflict and what have you. And so that kind of led to the the journey of the rewrite. And I was very anxious about letting people read that the first time, because I was afraid that, first of all, it would come off homophobic. I was very worried about that, and because I'm not, and I just am not cool with that. So
No.
I gave it to a wide group of people, and they all said, no, this is not. I think the ending is framed correctly. I think it's fine. And we actually all like how you have a gay lead character. He's just the lead character. He just happens to be gay. And I'm speaking of Lawrence there. And also people love to see somebody really get their ass handed to them, quote unquote, like Kevin does in the movie. So.
Can I ask, with that incident that you experienced at that party, did any of that? Did you use any of that translate? Not necessarily directly into the script, but was there any pointers from that you thought that is just so outrageous and obscene? I'm going to actually feed part of that into the script.
I wouldn't say actual lines or setups, but more the brazenness about it, the kind of. I don't want to say accusatory, but Kevin has this way of sort of a sixth sense for knowing when saying something would be a terrible idea, and then doubling down on that at the exact moment, and that's what I kept perceiving. So I kind of. And as an improviser, which I've done a lot of in my life and career, which is one of my favorite things to do, it's one of the tools I use to really, make sure a joke hits. Is I'll kind of do something surprising like that, that's seems out of left field for the audience. Once you've done it a bunch of times, you're just picking an opposite, and it's kind of a comedic sensibility you have. So I kind of tried to, invest that into it a bit.
And can you give us an idea of how difficult is the process of? I never ask what the budget is; it's none of my business, and that's not what I'm getting at. But is it possible you can explain what the hoops you have to jump through to get any kind of money, whatever that esoteric amount is, to get a film made, or what kind of pains you have to go through to achieve, particularly with, it could be a 5-minute film, it could be a 3-hour film. I know it's very, very difficult either way, but in particular, this is a 90 or 95, I think it's not 90-minute film or whatever it is. But how much how much pain do you have to go through to actually get the right people to invest in the film?
It's pretty rough, man. I mean, well, first of all, the only thing you ever hear when you're trying to get people to invest in movies, look, there are a lot of people out there who have money to invest into things, but
Yeah.
what they're more excited about in relation to investing in a movie is meeting a movie star. So I can't tell you how many times there was this great. I've got a great story about this with this actual project. Before I did the big rewrite on it, you know, in earlier renditions where Lawrence was a dentist from New York, and it just wasn't a very good movie at that point. Didn't have any real thing to say. And I was out trying to get a cast for about $5 million, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to get Mark Ruffalo and Sam, the guy who was in Moon attached, and you know, had a casting director calling all their people, and I mean, it wasn't happening, and even that wasn't enough money to get the movie made with a 60-person crew or whatever on a 50-day shoot, and I met this kid through a casting person, and he worked on Wall Street, and he said, "Oh, I've got a whole group of mid-20-somethings who want to invest in movies." And I'm like, "Great." And he's like, "I love your script." And I'm like, "Oh my God, the heavens opened up." And so I got on this conference call. You'll love this, man. I got on this conference call with all these basically kids, right? They've been out of college for 3 years. They're making millions of dollars at Goldman Sachs or Wall Street or whatever. Just the opposite of any human being. I have camaraderie with, and I'm trying not to make really terrible, cynical jokes about their profession or what have you. And and they go, so all of us want to put in $250,000. But we'll only do it if we get to meet somebody like, I don't know, Will Smith or Tom Cruise. I'm like, well, that's interesting, but I don't think we can afford him in this movie. And they're like, well, who would we get to meet? And then I start going through the list of names that we're hoping to cast. And, it's these really high-end A-list actors at first, and then it's getting down to, actors from Beverly Hills 90210 or whatever at the end, and they're just you could just hear the air coming out of them, because that's what they wanted to do. So I had been through that experience, and so what I decided to do instead was make this movie no matter what. And so
sorry, and from that, I don't want to say knockback, but from that, well, obviously it was a waste of your time, frankly. So
and I had many of those. So the deal was like this. Okay, how can I make this movie no matter what? First of all, I'm going to go back to my hometown where that kernel of awfulness happened, and I'm going to see if I can get some locations that match that. I started speaking to some people. It's a really small town. They were just happy that anybody was doing anything creative there. We shot at most of those places for free. I spoke to some people who don't live in LA, but have all been to film school and do amazing work, and are working on indie movies, when they're not working their day job somewhere else in the United States. And they love the script, and they were happy to come. And I decided to cast people who all work as improvisers here in Los Angeles, who don't necessarily look like quote unquote traditional actors, so that we would have a much more, I don't know, free flowing kind of realistic feel to it. So we all rolled up up into Carpinteria, California, where we shot it, where I went to high school. It's about an hour north of Los Angeles, and it may as well be the Midwest. That's how California is. We spent 17 days straight shooting. Most of the time, it was Ari Schneider and I there.
Yeah.
He was the other producer. We were part of a two-man improv team. He was there for about half of it, and the rest of the time it was me and the crew. And I kind of, went out of my way to rewrite the script a few times, so most of those roles were only one day, all the supporting roles. So I was able to get people up there for a day without it being too crazy. It was an hour drive up the coast. We shot under 8 hours every day except one day. So
that's pretty good, because most filmmakers I speak to, particularly the independents, if I ask the question, a lot of them will say, yeah, we was working from sort of 6 or 7 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night. And I'm kind of thinking, God, how do you do that? And I know they do it for a reason. The reason's to make the film, but if you can, I guess if you can structure in 8 hours, I mean, you're sort of, it must take quite a bit of the stress off the cast and crew if it's possible, I suppose.
Definitely, and since a lot of the cast were reasonably seasoned improvisers and some very seasoned, it's a very different animal than a traditional actor. I mean, they're in their character. They're not, the lines they say are arbitrary. It's whatever you want them to say. So one of the things that we did, and to be fair, this was an experiment. I didn't know if it was going to work out. Rather than get one $20,000 camera, we got three $3,000 cameras. So what we did for most of Elijah's Ashes is we would roll 3 cameras.
Yeah.
We'd have 2 cross shooting from the sides and 1 on a slider or on a little jib that I got, on Amazon.
Yeah.
And so there was no one off camera most of the time. There are only a few shots that are single camera, and they're very purposeful, and they really stick out in the movie. You go, whoa, what the heck is that? When Lawrence finds out that his dad may have killed himself, that was one. And so the rest of the time, everybody was on camera. We were getting 3 angles on every take. And in a lot of cases, we would move on after 4 takes. We would just,
because you've got
we have to move on. Because we have it.
Yeah, you've got the cameras all set up. I suppose that's the beauty of it. And having done that, and I'm sure worked with $20,000 or $30,000 cameras, what's your opinion of these? Because I know text moving is such a rate now, and the quality of cameras is leaping. I mean, look at phone cameras, for instance. But I mean, it looks, when you look at the visuals on this, it does look like high-end cameras are used. But is that just really a reflection of how good cameras are at a reasonable rate now?
Yeah. I think they are. I think you need to pick. I think it comes down to, again, your locations, what you're picking, kind of what you're putting in front of it, and also your framing. You can get away with a lot by just framing differently. We also went out of our way to shoot with natural light about 75% of the time. So we would have natural light with bounces. We would supplement with some LEDs and some smaller soft sources, so there are no real hard edges on things. And our DP, Sean Ayers, I mean, that's his thing. He's like Chivo, the guy who shoots for Quran and Inarritu. He's a big fan of natural light. He tries to use that to keep this weird kind of hyper-naturalism about the frame, which most DPs of his age don't do. I mean, most of them want to set up as many lights as they have, as many toys, and he's all about, what does the image look like when I turn the camera on? Well, let's supplement that a little bit. Let's see if this guy moves. If he goes there and it works, we're good. And so that attitude of saying, guys, we're not gonna kill ourselves to make this perfect. What we're trying to do is have a great time on the shoot and get through the day. B, kind of laugh at the performances that are happening, hopefully not ruining the audio. so and get a nicely even exposed image that I could, you know, color correct and post, which I did, and it wasn't too bad. The majority of it was really great. We shot a plat profile, so there was quite a bit of information in there, and you know, it was awesome. I highly recommend it. Whenever I hear anybody say, "Oh, I can't make this movie because of these things," I'm like, well, make another movie and make it with a DSLR. I don't know.
I mean, I'm looking
from someone. Make a short.
And I see what you mean about
don't even think about it.
No, sorry, I see what you mean about the natural light, because I'm looking at some of the stills here, and you can see exactly what you mean. I mean, it's just a really lovely look to the film, actually.
Appreciate that.
It's just a really natural
really
look.
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
no, it's a really lovely sort of natural look to it. Do you sort of ever, in hindsight, because I always call this plate spinning when you're sort of the director, producer, writer and so on, but do you ever think, it's just so tough to do that? Are you always happy to spin those plates, or is there a point where it gets so difficult, because let's be honest, you're going to be the go-to guy, aren't you, for everything?
Yeah.
You know, and do you ever...
I mean, my favorite things to do are direct and act. So most of my writing inspires both of those things, and it's sort of in service of those things. And I do like doing both of those things. As an improviser, again, not to harp on that, but in a sense, I sort of play that character while I'm directing. I keep that going, and then when I step in front of the camera, it's there. But I like directing it and acting in it, just because, you know, as any writer will tell you, they hear the dialogue like music in their head, correct? So it sort of sounds a certain way to them, and that's what they're going after. And especially with comedy, there's a rhythm and there's a delivery style and kind of this intangible feel that you're pursuing and you're going after. And it exists in drama as well. It's just a completely different animal. So, you know, I guess I really, on these projects, I view them kind of as these you know, these little artworks or pieces that I kind of want to follow through from the beginning to the end, and playing an integral piece of the way that the picture is going to look and the overall tone of it, to me, is the key to it. So, you know, being the director, I can kind of, you know, direct that, and as one of the lead actors, I can kind of, you know, solidify the tone of the film at the minimum with my performance, and that kind of breathes life into the tone of the film during the read-throughs, as well as once we're performing as well. Because if anybody's kind of out of that world, they're like, oh, he's doing this thing. Oh, I got it. I get where we're going here. Boom. And then stylistically, it all kind of lines up in it, and it's just really a lot of fun. I also have a great crew that I really trust. I mean, again, the DP Sean Ayers is awesome. I have a great line producer friend who's worked on every project with me, AJ Gordon, who you know, he just takes care of a lot of the nuts and bolts logistical production issues, and you know, on a film this big, there's not a lot of help. There's also not too much stuff, so it's not too crazy, and that kind of allowed me to just, you know, deal with the actors. It takes an enormous amount of prep too. That's the other thing.
No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine how hard it is. I mean, do you, because the improvisation? I know you're really keen on this. Does that mean that you may not even do this actually, Ryan? So I suppose this is a question. The first question would be: do you storyboard, or is that just not possible? Is that just something you're not a fan of? No,
I definitely storyboard. the thing I say about improvisation, I guess I like people who are trained that way, and then I and then I challenge them to try to be word perfect, which is really an interesting journey. And what I'm expecting is about 75, you know. So, but I definitely was very clear, and I am very clear on the other projects we've done regarding, you know, the frame line. And I'm like, look, you know, I want 2 takes where it's what's on the page. I want 1 take where you do whatever you want. And I want another take where you do something that completely is off the wall and surprises me. You know, go out of your way to make that different than whatever you wanted. And keep in mind your frame line is this and this and this. And if you turn out, we won't get any of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
So I kind of set it up that way. I definitely storyboard. I use a previs program called FrameForge. They're amazing. I discovered them when I did my first feature, The Truth. And it really just helps you organize your ideas as a director and get through the first 3 to 4 ideas you have for each scene. So you can build a little set, you can set some actors in there very quickly. It's very rudimentary. It looks really, you know, rudimentary. And then you can throw some cameras in there and you can start to play with the blocking, you know, and you'll find your first couple ideas for the way you were going to shoot the film were functional or maybe not functional or kind of a little weird. They worked out in your head, but not in reality.
Yeah.
You can kind of start to play with that, and you can really achieve a very cohesive feel for the film. And kind of experiment with a different kind of master on each thing, and then you know, you can print all those out, and it's just amazing to hand those over, and rather than having to manually draw them or whatever, and just hand them to somebody and be like, well, you know, this is what we're doing. Basically starts here, ends here, and this is what I was hoping for. Let's try to do that, and it's very, very helpful for the crew, you know, especially on these low budget films. You know, art department doesn't want to dress everything in sight. They only want to dress what's on 3 inches of either side of the camera, and it's completely understandable. And this really helps them to say, well, I guess I'm not even seeing that door. I don't need to worry about that room back there. You know, it's like, yep, we're not seeing the door, guys. You know, so I really try to storyboard as much as possible using the previs specifically because I can play with focal lengths of lenses and really just, you know, weed the garbage ideas out of there ahead of time, so I don't have to waste everybody's time on set, and we can, you know, really have more fun playing those characters and getting the stuff we're actually going to use in the cut, as opposed to stuff that's just going to end up in a hard drive as the, you know, the outtakes or on the cutting room floor, quote unquote, you know.
And are you the film that you wanted to make when you're thinking about to start shooting A Large as Ashes? Is the finished film pretty much the film that you hoped it would be?
It's funny. Certain parts of it, you know, far exceeded where I wanted to go in terms of where I thought it would go, and other parts, you know, I obviously have regrets about. But I think that's every filmmaker's, you know, lot in life. Yeah. It's you know, it's a collaborative process. You do it. You all have the best intentions. You end up with a bunch of stuff either on film or on a hard drive, and then you go into the edit bay and you make the best out of what you have there, putting your artistic and creative stamp on what's actually there as opposed to what you thought might be or hoped might be. And I love what we have there. I feel like we made the best out of what was there. There are very specific creative choices in the film, you know, that delay audience release and catharsis related to different parts of the film where we don't let the pressure off, and I really like that. And yeah, I like what was there. I'm a big fan of Alexander Payne's movies, Sideways and About Schmidt.
Yeah, Sideways is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So I was trying to get it in that neighborhood, and once the cut was sharpening up, I started to feel like, okay, we are in that neighborhood. We're possibly maybe a little more caustic and edgy than that, and slightly more broad comedically, and I'm totally fine with that. So I'm just gonna run with that. And there are definitely there's some scenes we only got one take of that was usable, and that was weather related, and we were able to really cut other footage over it and what have you, and really massage it so that it feels very seamless. And I'm really happy with it.
Can you imagine? Well, actually, not imagine. Yeah. Let's say, for argument's sake, you wake up tomorrow morning and you've suddenly discovered that you can only be a director or an actor. You can't do both anymore. Which one would you choose, and why? I know it's probably a bit of a tough question. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably choose being an actor, because at the end of the day, it's such a fun job. It really, I mean, it's just, performing is just amazing. I mean, my intention has always been to try to perform in as many people's projects as possible. It's just, the competition here in Los Angeles is pretty intense, and this is where I live, so it became an issue where I started branching out from that. And from a personal growth perspective, it was very, very great, learning how to direct plays and theater, and then shorts, and and thinking visually. I've always been into the visual arts. I have a degree in art history. I was a painter for many years, so that kind of eye is always part of what I do. I also feel like it can be extremely imprisoning, because you see things a very particular way, and being an actor is such a great release from that, because you have to let that all go and be in the moment. And that's part of why improvisation is so great as well. It's kind of all that same thing, like kind of yin and yang going back and forth. As a director, I guess I have a very particular style, and I think it's probably best adapted to comedy. I'm not gonna do Michael Bay. If I do it would be a parody of it. You know what I mean? I don't think I have those chops, and I'm totally fine with that. I prefer the chops related to the actual jokes and the storytelling aspect of it. Again, as an actor, I've done a lot of comedy, but recently I have another film that I self-produced called Repatriation that's just hitting festivals right now, and I play just a dramatic lead in that, and I've been getting some pretty good feedback for that as well. So I feel like I can play both and bring something slightly different to both sides of it, regarding characters. So yeah, I guess I would answer it that way.
Yeah, because you kind of preempted me, but that was going to be actually my next question, which, again, this is reading your resume on Film Freeway, and obviously you're plugged into lots of different things, and that was my question, what are you doing at the moment? And I suspect it's not just that, but would I be right in assuming you've got a few projects on the go at the moment, if you can talk about them, of course?
Yeah, no problem. So we finished we shot this other film called Repatriation with my good friend Douglas Mueller. He was a production designer on my first film. We worked together in different capacities for a while. And it was his first feature, and he said, hey man, I want to make this film out in Dubuque, Iowa, in the middle of the Midwest, where my father is from. It's completely different than anything you usually do. It's not a comedy, but I feel like you could bring something to it just because of your comfortability in front of the camera.
Yeah.
We're going to be shooting in live environments a lot with real people there, and what do you think? I read it, and I thought it was a very unique story. It's a soldier's first night coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq. We don't really say. And it's his journey from the bus station to his father's house through downtown. He basically goes on a pub crawl. He runs into a bunch of people who went to high school with, who he hasn't seen in 20 years, who were supposedly coming back for a wedding.
Yeah.
And the process of the night, you start to question whether he actually is a soldier or not.
Oh.
And many other things about him, which is a pretty interesting script. I had not read anything that dense or well delivered either.
So it's a drama. It's not a comedy. This.
Not a comedy
Not
at
at
all.
all, no.
It's definitely a drama. So we're hitting that pretty hard on the festival. We're hitting the festivals with that. It's won me a bunch of lead actor awards, which is awesome, because as a comedian, you don't usually get that. They don't usually give the awards to comedy. So, and it's premiering at Film Invasion LA, which is a small prestigious festival here in LA. We're out to distributors with that thing. And hopefully with the success that Elijah's Ashes has had, I mean, we've played 30-some festivals, a lot of stuff, and do have a distribution deal. It will really help this drama, because dramas are charter style, as you know. After that, I really went back to, I love Die Hard, and I love horror comedy. So I wrote a film called Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers. I wanted to do a slacker comedy in the vein of Napoleon Dynamite, Shaun of the Dead, Buddies, Misperceptions, Vampires, etc. We try to make a very straight-faced action comedy about misperceptions related to goth bands and vampires, and we're in post on that now. And it's a really funny movie. We're hoping to have it done by the end of the summer and out to Slam Dance and South by Southwest, and kind of genre festivals, which seem to be popping up. And after that, I think I'm going to continue on this kind of beating man comedic journey, but with some elements of horror, so that we do have a shot at playing both straight festivals and genre. As a producer, I get that that's an important aspect, to have some kind of marketability from a genre mixed in there. And people always ask me, they go, well, I mean, do you have new ideas for stuff? What's going on? How do you generate new ideas? And my greatest fear, to be brutally honest, is that I will die and not have made all the movies I want to make. You know what I mean? Just the ones I personally want to put up there, and have people experience and have fun watching. So, so I'm doing that. I'm also considering doing a pilot, and seeing what kind of self-generated distribution I can do for a 20-minute horror comedy pilot.
Right.
Because there's a lot of there's a lot of possibility through Amazon and Hulu and iTunes for self-distribution, and if you make a really funny, gory, fun pilot that looks like it can kind of have legs. You know, it's a much shorter shoot. It's you know, and there's a lot of money out there for TV. They're not happy to take a risk on a project unless they have some kind of proof of concept.
Yeah.
To be fair, I feel like all these features are proof of concept, but I'm thinking that next year that's going to be another mountain I tackle. You know.
Well, the best of luck with all. I knew you'd have lots of projects on the go, because it was like I say, looking at your profile, and it's very interesting you mentioned about the drama, because that must be, I'm sure I'm sure you've done drama before, but it must be quite nice to be able to switch up from one to the other. That must be a real nice bit of change you've got in your armoury, because I don't dare I say you're known more for comedy. I don't know if that's the right thing to say.
Yeah, for sure.
And being able
Definitely.
to do that must be a really nice option that you've got.
Definitely. Comedy, you're playing drama plus something. You know, it's a additional layer of performance and thought you're adding into it. Drama, you know, is much more stripped away, not necessarily easier. You're kind of, if anything, more exposed, and you know, I don't feel like, you know, there's only so many dramatic actors who can play very big characters and pull it off. I think the stripped down, kind of more subtle performance, you know, slightly less character layered in there is really the way to go, personally, for me, in drama. I mean, a lot of times my comedy is quite dramatic anyway, so I feel like I'm just being true to whatever that character is, or whatever the story is, kind of serving that, and I feel that will kind of dictate, you know, where there is room for jokes or you know, kind of dramatic rumination, you know.
Ryan, that's brilliant. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for your time.
No problem.
It's just always an absolute pleasure to talk to filmmakers, and you always get, I've never been disappointed, you always get such brilliant stories, and I always say this, but you're a great example of, I know I could talk to you for hours and it's just going to be great stuff, and unfortunately I'm going to have to call it a day, but which is always a shame, because I just get into the groove and we have these wonderful conversations with filmmakers, and it's just it's almost like such a crying shame you have to call a halt to it. And I've done that time and again. Honestly, time and again, we filmed interviews. Adam sort of in the background, wrap it up, because you got from all these wonderful tangents. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. Happy to talk about our film. I'm so excited to screen Elijah's Ashes, you know, with you guys. It's just awesome. I hope the audience has a great time watching it, and we'll be there in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much.